Hello, old school comic book appreciation review. Today we're going to look at a Marvel Premiere number 31 featuring Woodgod. This was originally published by Marvel Comics back in 1976. It was written by Bill Mantlo. Bill Mantlo he was kind of the go-to guy as far as writers in Marvel Comics from well, I know definitely during the early 80s, early mid 80s. I remember, I know he did a run on the Incredible Hulk. I know he did like the Micronauts with Michael Golden. I know he did a run on Spectacular Spider-Man. He created Cloak and Dagger. Um, what else? He did Alpha Flight for a long time. Uh, so he was all over Marvel for a good chunk of time. I know he's not in comics now, and the reason is actually pretty sad. I believe he was rollerblading one day and he was hit by a car, and it was a very very serious accident. He was no longer able to like take care of himself. I think he may be like in a nursing home or something like that. So that's actually really sad. Um, Oh, Rom the Space Knight. That's another thing he did. This was drawn. The art is by Keith Geffen. Keith Geffen is known these days mostly for being a writer. I know Keith Geffen has written like back in mid late 80s. He was doing the Justice League, the whole Bwahaha era. These days he's doing like the new Blue Beetle for DC, and I think over at Marvel he's doing some of the cosmic stuff, the Annihilation Conquest stuff. But like here, like I said, he's doing the art. The art is kind of sub Jack Kirby-ish, kind of in a way. Not so much to be a copy of his style, but the influence is definitely there. And the inking is by Klaus Janson, who, like a few years after this, got famous for working with Frank Miller on Frank Miller's Daredevil run. Okay, the story is basically kind of a pseudo science fiction monster tale. Basically, what's going on? There's this small town in the middle of nowhere, and there's this husband and wife scientist team doing experiments for the government. So they're doing nerve gases, they're doing this, they're doing that, they're doing whatever. And one of the things they're doing is this experiment where they mix human DNA with animal DNA, and then they create the star of the comic, who is Woodgod. Um, Woodgod's he's an innocent person. He's kind of got the mind of a child, whatever, and they're trying to raise him like, almost like a son or whatever. Meanwhile, the townspeople, uh, they're not happy about any of this. They say these people up there are running these weird experiments. Last year our crops died. Now they're doing some sort of godless, God knows what thing going on there. Let's go down there and teach them a lesson. So the townspeople all rally up. They get their guns. They smash the lab and everything, and they end up killing the husband and wife team and release nerve gas, which kills everybody else in the town. That is, everybody except for Woodgod. Then some government agents who are nearby are like, "What's going down? What's going on in the town? We need to go investigate." So they get all geared up in their hazmat suits and their flying hovercraft, and they find Woodgod there. And there's a big fight, and Woodgod beats them up, and he wanders off into the distance. Um, it's actually not a bad premise, or it's not a bad setup. I could totally see how, had this caught on, they could have spun off dozens of stories. You've got the small town. I'm sure there's some people who are still alive. So there'll probably be people who'd be his friends. Then there'll be people who want to kill him. I'm sure there's probably other creatures and things that have probably been mutated by the gas. Of course, you got the army guys who are chasing them. So I could totally see how this could have spun off into a series. The whole reason I even bought this comic is I remember being really young decades ago, and some kid brought a copy of Marvel Team Up that had the Incredible Hulk and Spider-Man in it, and this character in it. And I remember at the time thinking, he's a half man, half goat, and his name is Woodgod. And I just thought that was the most bizarre thing ever. Cut to decades later, I'm trying to get back into comics, and a local comic book store was having some sort of inventory sale, and they had tons of stuff in their quarter bins. So I'm flipping through it, and I saw this comic book here, and I remember the character, so I just bought it. Just bought it on a whim. Just bought it out of nostalgia. My main thing is I I want to know who okayed this idea. What was going on in a staff meeting where Bill Mantlo went to the editors or went to the management or said, "Yeah, I got this great idea. See, he's a goat man, half goat, and his name is Woodgod. Yeah, and the higher up said, "Yeah, run with it." I just think it's bizarre. They couldn't call him Man Brute for whatever reason, and even in the fictional story, if you've got this team of scientists, or this I'm sorry, well they were a team, this husband and wife scientist team, he's this experiment they're working on. Wouldn't they have called him something like Experiment XK9 Omega? Or if he was being raised as their son, wouldn't they have named him something like Bobby? I mean, who comes up with like Woodgod? Yes, we'll call him Woodgod. Our son Woodgod. That's just one of those things where you go, yeah, it's the mid 70s, and adults were weird back then. The other thing, though, I do know, just from reading recent interviews in magazines like Back Issue or Alter Ego, stuff like that, the idea was that before Jim Shooter became editor-in-chief at Marvel, the editorial process was actually really loosey-goosey. And I kind of get the feeling that a lot of people were able to get away with lots of stuff as long as it wasn't explicit or whatever. But yeah, Woodgod, okay. Half man, half goat, all attitude. So anyway, like I said, I just wanted to share that with you. If you've got your own ideas about, or any other things about weird, campy comic books that make you just go, what the HE double hockey sticks was going on there, let me know. Any comments would be appreciated, any ratings, whatever. Got to thank you very much for listening, and thanks, and have a great one.